He arrived every morning at 6:30 and no one knew his name. He was the quiet man who just cleaned the halls, emptied the trash cans, and never spoke to anyone. Until that Tuesday morning when gunshots rang out from the main entrance. Because no one at the school knew one thing. James McKenna had worked in the Special Operations Unit of the New York Police Department for 20 years. Jefferson High School was a three-story building of yellowed brick in a quiet Connecticut town. Every morning, the hallways of this school of those 200 students were filled with the same energetic noise, backpacks, laughter, teachers' reminders, and doors closing on lockers. But amidst this morning's chaos, there was one detail no one noticed. James McKenna. He was simply there, always there. His gray overalls, his battered cleaning cart, and his unwavering gaze. Students automatically stepped aside when they saw him. Teachers gave a polite nod, but no one ever initiated a real conversation with him. He was simply the invisible man of Jefferson High. But sometimes being invisible was the greatest advantage. James followed his usual routine that morning. Starting at the main entrance, he methodically cleaned every corner of the building. While his movements appeared random, each step was calculated. His 20 years of police experience had taught him to strategically assess every area. Exit routes, blind spots, potential threat areas. Old habits die hard. At 7:45, as students began settling into their classrooms, James was mopping the second-floor hallway. Just then he heard the sound of a car stopping at an unusual speed at the main entrance. His ears, with years of training, could distinguish very different tones. This wasn't the voice of a parent rushing. He slowly put down the mop. A door slammed, heavy footsteps, and then a sound never heard in the 47-year history of Jefferson High School. Automatic gunfire. When the first shots rang out, James's old mind immediately kicked in. Years of special operations training, threat assessment protocols, and crisis management techniques returned within seconds. He was no longer a janitor cleaning. He was Detective James McKenna. While everyone else in the school was running in panic, James, on the contrary, began to act with composure. First, he assessed the main entrance from his vantage point, from the sound direction, rate of fire, and movement pattern. He estimated the attacker was a single individual. With his experienced eyes, he realized the attacker was likely targeting students in the main hallway. This gave him a few minutes to intervene, but James had another secret, one no one knew. Behind the cleaning closet, he had hidden equipment in a metal box. This box was intended only for emergencies. Inside was the gun he'd vowed to never use upon his retirement, his encrypted radio, his Kevlar vest, and a folder full of special training certificates he'd earned in the final days of his 20-year police career. James's true story was far more complex. He wasn't just any police detective. He was one of the founders of the Crisis Response Unit, one of the NYPD's most elite units. He specialized in gang operations, hostage rescue, school safety protocols, all of them. The reason he retired was the trauma he suffered during his last assignment, a high school shooting in Brooklyn, where 3 students were killed due to their delay in responding. That day, James had promised himself, the next time he faced a situation like this, no bureaucratic obstacle would stop him. For 3 years, he had hoped he would never need these supplies, but sometimes life calls back your old identity. After collecting the equipment, James visualized the building structure. The main entrance was blocked, but the south emergency exit was still secure. His first task was to direct as many students as possible to that exit. He turned on his radio. The frequency was still the police department's emergency channel. This was no coincidence. On his first day at Jefferson High School, James had established an informal connection with the local police department. Security Chief Tom Bradley knew James's history and had asked him to observe only. But that observe only period ended today. McKenna here. There's an active shooter at Jefferson High. I'm currently on the second floor of the building and conducting a student evacuation to a secure area. Backup units requested immediately. The response from the radio immediately recognized him. The voice was Security Chief Bradley's. McKenna, what are you doing there? I thought you were retired. I'm retired, Tom, but I'm currently working as a janitor at Jefferson. I've been here 3 years and I know this building better than your department. Jesus Christ, James. Okay, I understand the situation. Units are 6 minutes away. Hold your position and focus on preventing civilian casualties. And James, we never had this conversation. Understood, Tom. But 6 minutes was a very long time in a school. And James had learned something over the past 3 years. These students weren't just numbers. He knew them all. James began systematically checking the second floor classrooms. But this time, he wasn't just James, the invisible janitor. He was a professional with tactical training and a deep understanding of crisis management. Before opening each door, he listened in, assessed the security situation, and calculated the most effective evacuation route. The first classroom was the biology lab. Inside were 22 students and teacher Sarah Wilson. When James knocked on the door, he was met with the teacher's astonished gaze. The man who had been quietly cleaning for 3 years had suddenly become a figure of command, organization, and control. Teacher, he said in a formal but calm voice, I'm James McKenna. There's a security threat at our school right now. We need you to evacuate your students via the south staircase, quietly, without panicking. Sarah Wilson rubbed her eyes. James, are you really the janitor? Teacher, explanation later. The lives of 22 of your students are in danger right now. Trust me and follow evacuation protocol. A flash flashed through Sarah's mind. James's behavior over the past 3 years, his ability to be a first responder in emergencies, his thorough knowledge of school security systems, his ability to remember every detail about the students. Maybe he really... Okay, James. Students, quietly grab your bags and follow Mr. McKenna. One of the students, 11th grade Marcus Thompson, asked, Mr. McKenna, are you really a police officer? James looked at him. He knew Marcus. He struggled in math, played on the basketball team, and had been having problems with some of his friends lately. It wasn't normal for him to know these details as a janitor, but James was observing every student. Marcus, the only important thing right now is to stay safe. Questions later. Move. In second grade, there was Robert Kim, the history teacher. He knew James better because they often chatted in the teacher's lounge. Robert noticed that James not only cleaned but also analyzed the general condition of the school very well. James, is this for real? Were you a cop? 20 years with the NYPD, Mr. Kim. You have 19 students right now, and we need to get them to safety. Seeing the seriousness on Robert James's face, he immediately took action. Okay, kids, we're listening to Mr. McKenna. In third grade, math teacher David Rodriguez was trying to protect the students by barricading the classroom door. There were 28 students in this class, and they were all shaking with fear. When James knocked on the door, the teacher had difficulty recognizing him, because the man standing before him wasn't the man who quietly swept the halls every morning. I'm James McKenna, the janitor. Open the door and we'll evacuate the students to safety. James, why are you carrying a gun? Why do you have a walkie-talkie? Mr. Rodriguez, you have 28 students right now, and the threat is moving upstairs. You have to trust me. You can either come with me or wait here and take your chances. David Rodriguez understood the authority in James's voice. It was the tone of someone accustomed to taking orders. And why did James know so precisely how many students were in the classroom? Okay, James, but please explain. Rodriguez, the explanation is later. For now, focus on survival. At this point, she also encountered Jennifer Walsh, her fourth grade English teacher. Jennifer remembered how James had responded to a fire alarm at school last year. That time, while everyone else was panicking, James systematically checked all exit routes, organized the students, and provided detailed information to the fire department. At that moment, Jennifer's mind wondered, why is this guy so professional? Jennifer, we're getting 16 of your students to safety. It's time to move. James, last year, during the fire alarm, you were already like a cop. Old habits die hard, Jennifer. Let's move now. As the evacuation progressed, James listened intently downstairs. The gunfire had stopped, which could mean two things. Either the shooter was reloading or he was preparing to go upstairs. To James's experienced ear, the latter possibility was true. James had just completed the evacuation of the senior class when he heard the sounds of the stairs. Now it was his turn, but he would not run away. For 20 years, he had worked New York's most dangerous streets, conducting drug raids and apprehending armed robbers. He had thought he would never face such situations again when he retired, but life was testing him again. He took a position at the top of the stairs. But James wasn't just waiting, he was thinking strategically. 20 years of experience had taught him that such situations usually ended in two ways, either professional intervention with minimal casualties or panic-stricken chaos. James calculated every detail to ensure the first option. The shooter, approximately 19 or 20 years old, dressed in black and carrying a semi-automatic AR-15, was ascending the stairs. James analyzed his movements. He wasn't experienced, probably his first time attempting such an action, but he appeared determined. The way he held his weapon was amateurish yet dangerous. James deployed the psychological tactics he had learned over the years. Attackers this age often sought attention. Surprise was the most effective way to thwart their plans. Stop! Drop your weapon! The young man turned in surprise. He didn't see what he expected. Not a police officer, not a SWAT team. It was an older man in gray overalls, hidden behind a cleaning cart, but still sporting a professional gun-handling demeanor. Who are you? Do you work at this school? James's voice was calm but firm. I'm James McKenna, the person responsible for the security of this school. Put your weapon down, put your hands up. The shooter hesitated briefly. This scenario hadn't been planned at all. James seized the opportunity and began using the negotiation techniques he'd honed over the years. Listen, kid, you're surrounded. Police units have surrounded the building. The choice you make right now will determine how you get out of this situation. Tell me your name. My name is Tyler. Tyler Morrison. James's name clicked in his mind. Tyler Morrison. The name sounded familiar. Then he remembered. The student who dropped out of school last year. Academic problems, social exclusion, family issues. He'd seen it in the school counselor's files. Tyler, I remember you. I was a student at Jefferson last year, the kid who struggled in Ms. Rodriguez's math class. Your family moved to Boston. Tyler's eyes widened in surprise. You, do you know me? But was I the janitor? Yes, Tyler, but I'm also someone who remembers every student in this school. Why did you come back here, Tyler? Tell me what went wrong. This approach seemed to stop Tyler. He was torn between being an anonymous attacker and a known kid. They, they ostracized me. Nobody cared. When I left, nobody even called. James understood Tyler's psychological state. This wasn't a revenge fantasy, but a need for attention and recognition. Tyler, there's someone listening to you right now. I'm here, and I hear you. But not like this, kid. That way nothing solves anything. You're just a janitor, Tyler shouted, aiming his gun at James. You can't understand me. But James McKenna wasn't just a janitor, and he understood Tyler's story perfectly. With reflexes honed from years of special operations, Tyler's finger rolled aside the moment he tried to pull the trigger. But this time he wasn't just defending himself. James also exploited Tyler's psychological state. Tyler, I've experienced great loss in my life just like you. I've had times when I felt invisible too. Tyler's movements paused for a moment. James continued. I was a cop for 20 years. On my last assignment, I couldn't save 3 kids your age in Brooklyn. Their names were Michael, Sarah, and Danny. That's why I retired. That's why I came here. Tyler's gun began to shake. You're lying. Tyler, for the last 3 years, I've been trying to protect every student in this school. You were one of them. I know you struggled in math. I saw you sitting alone in the cafeteria, but I never considered you invisible. James was also strategically positioning himself as he spoke to Tyler, but this time the goal wasn't just to take him down, it was to save him. If I were you right now, Tyler, I'd be furious too. But I promise you, if you put down this gun, someone will listen. Someone will hear your story. Tears began to stream from Tyler's eyes. But it's too late. Nothing is too late, son. I started a new life at 55. You're only 19. At that critical moment, Tyler's finger left the trigger. James knew the moment he'd been waiting for years had arrived. A chance to save a life without violence. Tyler, put your gun down slowly. I'll come over and we'll talk. Tyler, sobbing, dropped his gun. James rushed to his side and hugged him. Okay, kid, okay. You're safe now. Just then, police sirens rang out from outside the school, but the real crisis had been resolved without violence. McKenna, report your situation. Security Chief Bradley's voice came over the radio. Tom, the situation is under control. The target has dropped his weapon and surrendered. The situation is safe. No injuries. Medical attention may be needed. Psychological support. What did you say, James? Did he drop his weapon? Yes, Tom. Tyler Morrison, 19, a former student. He has issues that need to be addressed, but no violence was used. A few minutes later, Jefferson High School was surrounded by police, but this time, not for a funeral, but for a success story. Tyler was crying in James's arms, and when the police arrived, he surrendered. Security Chief Tom Bradley was surprised by what he saw when he entered the school. Instead of the chaos and tragedy he had expected, he saw James McKenna speaking calmly to Tyler. James, how is this possible? James looked tired but satisfied. Tom, sometimes the best weapon is empathy. As the ambulance crews took Tyler to the hospital for a psychological evaluation, Tyler took one last look at James. Mr. McKenna, did you really remember me? James smiled. Tyler, I remember every kid in this school because you all matter. As James handed the shooter over to the police, the school's principal, Dr. Patricia Wells, approached him. Her eyes were teary and her voice held both surprise and gratitude. James, were you really a cop? James gave a tired smile. Retired detective, Dr. Wells. 20 years with the NYPD Special Operations Unit. But why didn't you tell us? Why do you work as a janitor? James looked at the cleaning cart, then down the school hallways. Because, doctor, everyone needs a second chance. I wanted a quiet life, too. But some things never truly leave you. Dr. Wells approached him. You worked quietly here for 3 years. No one knew who you really were. But today you probably saved the lives of hundreds of students. It was my job, James said simply. That evening, the local news headlined James McKenna's story. Undercover hero, retired detective saves his school. But James refused to speak to the media. He simply wanted to return to his job the next day. But Jefferson High would never be the same. Students looked at Janitor James differently now. They bowed respectfully as he passed, some saying, "Thank you, Mr. McKenna." Teachers showed him more respect, and he held regular safety meetings with the vice principal. But the biggest change had been in James himself. He no longer felt as invisible as he had before while cleaning. People knew who he was, and he realized he wasn't just the janitor at this school. He was its protector. A week later, Dr. Wells made him a formal offer. James, we'd like to offer you the position of security coordinator at our school. A raise, better working conditions, and the official responsibility of protecting our students. James considered the offer for a moment, then smiling, he replied, Doctor, I've been protecting your students for 3 years already. The only difference is, now everyone knows about it. 3 months later, Jefferson High School's security protocols had evolved into a system modeled statewide. Under James McKenna's leadership, the school's security systems were completely revamped. But most importantly, no one used the phrase "just a janitor" anymore, because James had taught them something. True heroes can appear in the most unexpected places and in the most ordinary guises. A year later, on the anniversary of that day, the students of Jefferson High School organized a memorial in James McKenna's honor. But James didn't want his name on the memorial. Instead, the following sentence was written, "True heroes serve in silence." And every morning at 6:30, James still arrived at his school. Now as the security coordinator, but still with his cleaning cart, because, according to him, if you truly wanted to protect a place, you had to know it from corner to corner. The students now called him Mr. McKenna, but he still protected them with the same care, the same attention, because his true mission hadn't changed, protecting people. And so the invisible man of Jefferson High School became both a visible and a more powerful protector. Have you ever met someone like this? Someone who seemed ordinary but actually had an extraordinary past? Share their stories in the comments. On Hidden Stories, we'll continue to give voice to the voices of the silent heroes. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, because the stories of true heroes are stories that should not be forgotten. See you in the next video. Until then, pay a closer attention to the seemingly ordinary people around you, because, they might be hidden heroes ready to save your life. Welcome to Hidden Stories. We'd appreciate it if you could tell us which city you're watching from in the comments. And if you think stories like this deserve to be heard, please support this channel by clicking the subscribe button.